Hey there viewers, thank you for tuning into Supermariodiagnostics once again. Today we are working on a 2016 BMW X1 with a B46 engine in it. The job is a thermostat water pump assembly, and we are going to do a repair video on this one. I believe it'll be the first one on YouTube on this particular engine. It is a big job, and I would not suggest it for those who are new to doing this stuff or a DIYer. To be honest with you, I would highly recommend that if you are a DIYer or a motoring viewer, that you consult a professional to do this job, because it is going to be at the very least over 8 hours, 10 hours from start to finish. So, but the point of the video, I think that most of the people who are going to watch this video are going to be technicians. You're just going to want to get the skinny on what you're going to be running into, all the part numbers, all the seals, the whole process. So I already went ahead and recovered the refrigerant from our system. We're going to go ahead and remove this cap and remove the coolant from the cooling system. This car has sat over here overnight. It is not hot. Be careful if you are removing this and it is hot. I'm going to set this aside. We're going to get right into it. And yeah, just to reiterate, if you have any doubt whatsoever, even after watching this video, any doubt whatsoever about doing this job from start to finish, you are going to need a lift. If you have any doubt whatsoever, please consult a professional and have a professional do it, do the job for you. Someone who's done it before, someone who specializes in BMW. There's a lot of knowledgeable technicians out there that can do this job for you. And if you do take this upon yourself to do it, and you walk into a shop and you couldn't finish the job and something went wrong, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to be too happy with that, because then they have to figure out where you went wrong. Did you strip a bolt? Did you strip something in the engine? Because we're bolting up to the engine. If you strip something, it is not going to end well. So, or if you cross thread something, it is not going to end well. But with that being said, let's jump right in. So the very first thing we're going to do is access the battery to disconnect the negative terminal. And to do that, we have to remove this cowl right here. And you're going to have some clips, body clips, that you're going to have to remove. Nothing too crazy. And set those aside. You're going to want to be very organized, because there's a lot of disassembly required here. We also have a bunch of 8mm bolts that we have to remove now, in order to get this cowl off as well. For me, it is by far going to be the easiest thing to do. We have to get this bracket off as well. We have some body clips right at the ends. Mind you, I am doing more than just the thermostat on this. And a 10mm will do just fine for the negative terminal of the battery. Make sure it doesn't somehow reconnect, obviously. We'll leave that just like that. And we're also going to remove this go ahead and remove this. And this was already broken, so looks like I'm not the first one to be here. There we go. And let's not forget these body clips right here as well. There's two, one on each side. Next, we're going to remove the fan cowl. This main power wire, we just disconnect it right here. I'm going to set this aside for now. It is a little dirty, and it's going to let go of a lot of stuff, so we're going to set it away from the intake so that when we remove the intake, nothing falls into it. Let's go ahead and remove this upper hose from this clip. Those are T30s and it's kind of recessed in there, so you're gonna have to have something that can actually reach down there. Remove this gasket here. There are locks that are keeping this radiator from this fan cowl from coming up, so you'll have to push back on that in order to unlock it before it will be removed. We're just going to gently pull up, and there is one more connection that we have to let go, and that connection has been released. Let's go ahead and continue. And it is out. If you managed to not break anything, that is how it's done. That is a tight fit, I gotta tell you. Let's remove this acoustic cover, and I want to get this partition out of the way as well. That's an 8mm right there. So we're going to remove the Valvetronic actuator. And yes, you will need a scan tool to do the stop limit relearns on that actuator right there. So, and I'm just disconnecting anything that I believe will not come with the intake. So the Valvetronic actuator harness is not going to come with it, so we're just removing it. And we could go ahead and disconnect that anyway. That alternator is going to have to come out. Of course, well, the cap fell. I'll go ahead and grab that later since I'm going to be underneath there anyway. Man, that sounds like a big ass machine. I think it was huge. Yeah. We're going to use a 13mm to remove that bolt, that nut. And so that we don't lose it, we're going to remove the harness and replace that nut on there. I'm going to remove this map sensor. It's a manifold absolute pressure sensor. There we go. And we're going to remove this, what I believe is a boost pressure sensor, because it is before the throttle body. Manifold absolute pressure sensor, it is after the throttle body on the manifold. And let's go ahead and remove this. We've got another hose right here, which is a coolant hose tucked underneath the manifold that we're going to have to remove from the clip and get this manifold out of here. We do have one more harness that we have to remove, that is the purge valve connection. And we're going to disconnect the purge valve and get this purge valve out of the way. And it is out in one piece, so let's go ahead and put that back. I'm not going to connect it just in case I need to disconnect it later. And let's go ahead and remove the intake manifold bolts, 10mm. And I like to start on the outside, work my way in. We're going to gently, cautiously remove it, because there may be other things connected, and like case in point, throttle body connection right here. And we're going to have to remove this purge valve line here. Always a good idea to, while you're in there, look at the intake valves for carbon. I gotta tell you, these are some of the cleanest valves I've seen for a GTI. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the eccentric shaft actuator. And for that, we're gonna need a 4mm Allen bolt to put it into a release position first. And I personally do it by hand. I would not put a tool on this. We're going counterclockwise, and you do not want to force anything. You just want to do it until it meets the stop. If you just take off those mounting bolts without doing this, you risk destroying the teeth of not only this actuator but the eccentric shaft as well. And there it has stopped me, so I do not want to continue going forward. Now in the old ones, I'm not sure about this one 100%, I can't remember off the top of my head, but on the old ones you remove the mounting bolts while holding it in and then go clockwise to back it out. We're going to try that and see what happens. And we are using T27 bolts for that. I'm going to start with the bottom one since it's a little difficult to access. So I'm just going to feel for like a spring type feel. There's no springiness to it, but it doesn't just come out. So that's where we go ahead and carefully go clockwise. Or that could be the gasket as well. So in this case, we're not going clockwise. We're continuing in the counterclockwise. And just like that, we, without any damage to any of these components, remove this actuator. And yes, we are changing that seal right there. We're getting that straight from BMW. We're going to be changing out that seal. I'm just going to mask off this hole right here, just to prevent anything from happening. Let's go ahead and clean up the mating surfaces in order to get this tape to hang on. Let's go ahead and install this tape. This is just a safety precaution. In most cases it's unnecessary, but it's just that rare case where it is necessary and then you didn't do it and it could fall into the combustion chamber. It's just a good part of the process. Nothing wrong with being a little extra careful. So we can't take off the alternator without removing the belt first, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. So the tensioner is up top and we're gonna have to remove this brace in order to get the room that we need. This is a 19mm wrench, and I didn't completely remove the belt, only enough to get the alternator pulley off. Let's go ahead and remove the alternator connection, electrical connection. And I am using one of these, one of my favorite tools, 10mm from Matco. These are the extended ratchets. They are not hex or 12 point. They're the spline type, and they are very handy. Never had an issue with them, using them on these type of bolts. But if you don't have one of these, you may want to use the correct socket for it. The second bolt is underneath, and it may be a whole lot easier to just get it from the bottom, honestly. So let's go ahead and do just that. Either way, we have to take the compressor out, and to get anywhere near it, we're gonna have to get it from underneath. So one way or another, this thing's gonna have to be lifted. We also have to drain the coolant and take it from there. We're also going to use some 8mm and 10mm to remove this wheel arch cover. And we got a body clip over here. Got our cap. Very difficult for you guys to see it, but there is the second bolt that I'm removing. All right, so I think I'm gonna just slightly move this washer tank in order to help me get this pipe out of here. There's a bolt that the washer tank is blocking. That'll give me enough room that I need. Why try to get all you know, tight work in such a cramped up space when you could just do one move and make it so much easier for yourself. So that is the idea here. And with that, I can remove this tube here and give me more access to what I need. I may need to remove that bracket slightly just to get it out, but not a big deal. There's no way I'm going to get you guys a good shot of that, so I'm just going to have to continue moving on. We're going to remove the bottom alternator bolts. There we go. All right, that bolt is finally out. And now may be a good time to just unbolt the compressor while we're down here. Compressor bolt is out and wet. I think I'm not going to have a choice but to remove this pipe here, because how else is that compressor going to come out? Got the last bolt right here. All right, we got this out too. Coming to a bay near you. These alternators suck, I'll tell you that much right now. Make sure you don't lose the bolts. Make sure you reinstall it with the bolts. You can see some of the leak that I saw. This thing acts like death fluid. It almost wants to seal itself. It crystallizes or something. I don't know what you call it, but you got some of that white right there. That's coolant. Some right there. Way more right there. That's where I saw it. That's coolant, fellas. That is why we're changing this, because it's a very, very slow leak, but it is a leak nonetheless. And the compressor's on there nice and tight as well. We're just going to make a couple of disconnections here. One of them is the compressor, and there's of course yet another safety connection. They are obsessed nowadays with these connections. And we also have, we don't need to disconnect the valve for the compressor because that's part of the harness that we just disconnected. And there is the thermostat. I believe that is temperature sensor, if I'm not mistaken. See if we can easily remove that connection. Gotta love the mighty pocket screwdriver for that one. I would like to remove these AC lines as well, but we have this in the way. I don't want to bend anything or break anything, so I'm going to remove the coolant first, then remove this coolant hose, and then remove the AC lines to the compressor, remove our compressor, and then get to our thermostat water pump. And this is the lowest coolant hose I could find, so we're going to remove this clip that wasn't supposed to come completely off, but we still have it, no worries there. And pull back this hose and drain out this cooling system. That was the whole point of removing the reservoir cap, because if you leave it on, it'll take much longer due to all the stuff that's in it. Let's go ahead and reinstall that. Put our clip back on. And move on. Give that a little tug to make sure it's completely installed. We'll clean that up later as well. So we got the coolant drained. Now we're going to remove this clip here. Pull down on it. And carefully remove this hose. And apparently the coolant didn't drain completely. Good thing I have a pan down there for it. We're going to have something in the lines. And now we have the clearance we need to remove those AC lines. We don't want any coolant getting into the compressor, so I'm just going to move this over. Just going to hit this with a little bit of brake clean. And try it up a bit. Alright, so let's get these compressor lines off. These are steel bolts, by the way, which can be reused. If they were aluminum, you'd be replacing them. Let's see if we can remove this thing. I know this thing has dowel pins, so you cannot pry it sideways. You'll have to kind of pry it outwards. And we're good there. All right, we're halfway there, fellas. Alternator bracket is removed. Just gonna let it drain a bit. And we're cleared. So here's the new one, and there is that anaerobic sealant. I couldn't confirm 100% with OE instructions, but based on the knowledge drop by the BMW techs that I met yesterday, yeah, this could be an anaerobic sealant, and this will have to be cured 24 hours before filling it up and putting this car back into service. Thank you a ton to Bryant for giving me that information. I won't say his last name because, believe it or not, OE has difficulties with sharing information. I've seen it time and time again where dealer technicians share to the public and they end up getting in hot water for it. So all these people that say, oh, the OE wants the everything for the aftermarket, I don't believe it entirely, but that's all I'm gonna say about that. Yes, I am starting them by hand. The last thing we need is to cross thread the engine. So I am being extra careful here. It is up to you to do it however you see fit, but I'm not going to take that chance. And I know you guys can't see this, but you've seen the disassembly. You know what we're doing here. I'm on the last bolt now, putting it in by hand, and the spec is 14 foot-pounds. Now for my next trick. I don't have the exact tool, BMW tool, because we all know that BMW is a tool manufacturer, to pressure test this, so I made up my own way, and that is to use the same hose that goes to the radiator and clamp it down to the thermostat outlet and put this bladder here in order to facilitate our test. And our test is basically showing the integrity of the thermostat. If it is unable to build pressure, you have an internally leaking thermostat. It probably would have been wise on retrospect to do this off of the vehicle, but either way, I didn't want to skip out on this on the video. This is not a perfect seal by any means, but service information is specifically explicit on whether or not this is able to create or build pressure. So we're going to do that with our little mighty vac here. Supposed to put it up to 7.5 psi and whatnot. If I can only get this thing seated right. Let's go ahead and give that a shot. And it does build pressure. It's not like it's unable to build pressure. So it does say that if it falls below 1.5 psi, it is considered a leaking thermostat. But and they tell you to use a pump. They must have a very high resolution pump, but that is building pressure, that is holding pressure. They say it's normal for it to fall to 1.5 psi, but it should be able to hold. So, and obviously it's holding. If I were to completely release all pressure, there we would see the difference. So looks like we got ourselves a good thermostat. And now you know how to test whether it is leaking internally before completing the complete repair. And that right there is your only shot at getting this part number for the alternator bracket in this video. Let's not forget to change the compressor seals. We've got some new ones going in. Might not be the same color, but they're the same exact seals. So let's go ahead and install these and put that compressor back on. So to make it a whole lot easier, we're going to have to push back this bushing before installing it. And for that, we're using a 13mm socket, which fits perfectly over that bushing. And these are just nuts and bolts that I found in my stash. Nothing crazy. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. And it's not much at all. It's probably a millimeter. And that's it. One for good measure. And done. And before we connect our compressor, let's go ahead and connect this thermostat connection here and try to get that line out of the way. I do not remember it going through in between the compressor and the mounting bracket, so we're going to keep that out of the way. Let's go ahead and add the seals to the AC lines. Go ahead and connect the coolant line here. Got the AC line down here as well. Don't know if you guys can see this. Make sure you put the safety tab back in. Same thing for that thermostat housing. I'm sorry, that thermostat line that we connected earlier as well. Make sure that nothing gets pinched. That is a 24mm socket right there, and the original bolt of the alternator. Let's not forget to leave both bolts installed when putting in the alternator. And be very careful not to damage anything on the way in. There we go. I'm gonna get the upper bolt in first. Threaded, I mean. Threaded first, and then I'll deal with the bottom one afterwards. So we're almost tight. You do not want to tighten it down until you got the bottom bolt started at the very least. Even then, I would try to drive it in a little more. I won't be able to tighten it from the top though. So either way, I'll have to lift it up. You might feel it get tight, but if you're not fully tightening it, all you're feeling is the bushing getting put into place, but it's not actually tight. You have to make sure that you're seating the bushing, but also fully tightening that bolt. So you feel it get tight and then loose again. That's the bushing moving. And we are tight. So I don't have the tool for the belt removal and installation. We took it off with a 19, but taking it off is one thing. Installing it is a whole nother thing. I was gonna go, I have a Vim 19mm tool that had a bent head, and I was thinking about straightening it out. But instead I asked my brother for a straight version of it, and this is what he gave me. He gave me a 3/4 Matco spline tool, and seems like Matco is really pulling through today. We're gonna give this a shot, see how it works. And if anybody wants to know what the tool number is, there you go. Why give BMW your money when you could do it? And you can get one of these on eBay or something like that and make it happen. That is beautiful. Let's see if we can single-handedly put this belt on. Wow, the belt is on. I gotta tell you, without the right tools, you are not getting it done, I promise you. Even if it's something as simple as a belt. I'm just making sure that all of the splines are lined up, the belt is perfectly seated all around, and it is. Let's go ahead and reconnect the alternator connection, electrical connector. And we also have the main wire on there. That is a 13mm. If you have any doubts about that, do it by hand. Let's go ahead and install this wheel arch cover. Now the original clips are one-time use only. They're much like rivets, plastic version of rivets. And you only get one shot with them, so we don't have any in stock at the moment, so I'm going to use regular clips. Not a big deal. I mean, who's going to cry about clips? I'm going to have to put these in between the plastic and the body, this arch cover. And it's going to be hard for you guys to see this. And it is not that easy to do. And there we are in. Perfect. These are the clips that originally came in with the vehicle. They are like rivets. You squeeze them enough until the top part pops out. Can't reuse them. So we're going to use some regular clips on this one. Perfect. Let's go ahead and install these 8mm screws. Let's not forget this clip over here as well. We also have some 10mm nuts to put on. Go ahead and put our wheel back on. Let's go ahead and install our suspension brace back on. Do not forget that this cable goes underneath the suspension brace. And here's the part number for the intake manifold gaskets, which we're about to change right now. Alright, we can finally get this tape removed. We're just going to give it one final cleaning before installing the manifold. In some cases a gentle cleaning went through it, so that's where we come in with a carbide scraper. I'm going to gently lay it down and just gently go back and forth until that rough stuff comes off. It is literally gently going over it. You'll feel it scratching off all that crap that's on there. There's no need to apply any real pressure. You're simply scratching that stuff off. You want to be careful in the angle that you come in, because you can end up scratching the head. That is not what you want. You can make a very deep score and cause an intake leak if you're not careful. Believe it or not, that's actually pitted into the head. So BMW for the win, right? Ultimately, the goal is a nice flat surface, nothing that is sticking up that will prevent the manifold from fully seating. That's all we really want. All right, let's go ahead and install the world's smallest intake. What it looks like. So let's see here. This is Valvetronic. I believe this went over. And in the following sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to torque them down to 88 inch-pounds. Now we're just going to connect everything in sight. Let's go ahead and connect this throttle body connection right here. Make sure you push in that safety tab. We've got a vacuum hose down here as well. Nice audible click. Let's not forget our alternator bolt cap. We're going to connect our boost pressure sensor here. This alternator wire comes way forward. Let's go ahead and set that down right there. Our Valvetronic comes down this way, that's good. We can sit that down though right here. We've got our purge valve hose right there. We're going to sit down our purge valve into its mounts. We're going to connect the intake side hose to the purge valve. This thing's making a hell of a mess. I'm going to connect our purge valve as well. The electrical connector. And put that mount down as well. So they want you to put the Valvetronic wire down first and then put that down to secure it. Kind of weird, but okay. It's a tight fit for the Valvetronic wire. We're going to leave that loose until we install that Valvetronic actuator. We got the manifold absolute pressure sensor connector right here, and the mount right there. We've got this coolant hose right here. There's a clip for it. I hope you guys can see all this. And let's not forget our boost pipe. We are fully seated. I think it's a good time to remove this tape from the head. Here's the part number for the Valvetronic actuator seal. That is the only seal you got to protect from oil leakage coming out of there. So let's go ahead and remove the old one. You're going to want to grab just the very tip. Just the tip. And that is it. Let's go ahead and replace that thing. Make sure it is fully seated. Before we install the actuator, let's just go ahead and clean this up one more time. And remember, we're going to use a 4mm Allen to set it in. You're not just going to ram this thing in there. And we're going to just undo the alternator harness a bit just to get enough room to get our tool in there. And we're going clockwise to set it in. It takes zero effort. If you have to force anything, you may be doing something wrong. It would have been easier to install the actuator before the manifold, but there's going to be situations where you will not have that choice. You're just replacing the actuator by itself. So what I'm doing is using a magnet to get that bolt in there first before tightening it down with an Allen wrench. Of course, it is risky because it could just fall, but after doing this for a while, it becomes a lot easier. And connect its connector and set down the clip. Now it's time for the fan. We're gonna carefully put this sucker back in there. Last thing we want is to break something right when we're at the finish line. Mind you, if you are working on a high mileage vehicle, I would not be surprised if you had some kind of breakage. It does happen. We're taking our time here. This is not a competition to be the fastest gun in the West. Fortunately, everyone wants their car immediately, so. Thankfully for us though, this customer has been great. Absolutely a model customer. I understand some people have daily drivers and all that. They need their car fast, but fast with speed sometimes, not every time, comes mistakes. So the last thing we need is to get rushed into mistakes and into breakage. Some people would just rush through this, push it right down, and then end up with problems. That's not the goal here. Slow and steady wins this race. Just want to make sure we're fully seated. I'm gonna put everything over the fan. And we are in. Just gonna make this final connection over here. If you guys remember from earlier. Mount that where it goes. And we are in. Perfect. Just make sure that your wire is beneath that clip. We don't want that wire just flying everywhere. Let's go ahead and put this upper radiator hose the way it should be. I'm gonna put this line where it should be as well. This comes with the cross section, cross connection, whatever you want to call it. And as intended, we left this here. That is our fan connector. Give it a little tug just to make sure it is fully seated. And let's go ahead and put in our bolts. Gonna start them off by hand. Remember, you're gonna need a bit of an extended T30 for these. At least I did. My regular Allen sockets, I'm sorry, my regular Torx sockets wouldn't fit. And we got our vacuum going in the AC system while we go ahead and finish off this car. Let's not forget to put this seal here. Go ahead and install the air intake housing. Connect the mass airflow sensor. Press that safety tab. We've got this bolt over here, 10mm, so we got to set down. And we got this 6mm clamp right here. We can go ahead and install this engine cover. Make sure that this line right here is above this hose. We still have some nuts, we still have some screws to put in over here. Let's not forget that. So before we put on this main windshield cowl, we're gonna have to put on these side parts first. And there are a couple of clips at the ends that you're gonna have to put on. We're gonna do the same thing for the other side. We're gonna do the same thing for this side, but before we do that, we have to install this partition first. Let's go ahead and install this shielder here. That's gonna be held down by a bolt and a clip. Go ahead and reconnect our battery here. Now we can put our cowl on after you've removed the leaves. Back in the good old days, you used to get electrical problems from not cleaning out your drains. So something to keep in mind. I don't know if that's the case for these newer vehicles, but it could happen. That's held down by two clips as well. And we got another clip for that partition right here. I needed to do that for the engine mount, so maybe you'll get lucky and be able to get all the stuff you need with the Valvetronic actuator out without having to remove this partition, but in my case I did anyway. Go ahead and install this seal right here. And that is it, my friends. We are going to fill up the coolant using a vacuum fill. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I do have a video on what it is to do a vacuum fill. And we're gonna fill up the AC system. We have to do the scan tool Valvetronic stop limit relearn as well. And go for a test drive, make sure it can get up to operating temperature and regulate its own operating temperature as well. So and of course, after the test drive and everything, we're going to check for leaks one more time and then reinstall the underbody panel. Don't think you guys really need a video to show you how to install that back on, but I think this will be a good place to stop for the video. I hope this was very useful information for you guys. It's not perfect. These cars are just coming out of warranty and they're pretty new to the independent side of the automotive industry, so keep that in mind when you're watching this video. I do appreciate you all for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you all next time. Last but not least, I know I'm gonna get it in the comments section. Some of you were paying extra special attention at this one detail that I forgot. This cable actually goes underneath here, so let's go ahead and fix that. before everyone loses their minds. And actually it goes underneath this as well. We are done with that. So let's go ahead and put this back. I'll be sure to send hyperlinks to this particular spot in the video for those who don't finish videos before commenting. And that is it. We're done.